So this is a quick video on how to do a refutation or confirmation exercise. Both exercises are the same, except you're doing the opposite in each one. So in the refutation, you're refuting the story, the narrative. You're saying that it can't be accurate. And then in the confirmation, you're saying that it must be accurate. So this is an example. I'm going to use the refutation. So what you have is the narrative from Odysseus and Palamedes here. Now, I've structured it a little differently than how we did it before. So you have the narrative, then you have the 6 components of the narrative. So you're going to fill this out. Who are the agents? So Odysseus, Palamedes, Agamemnon, etc. Action, time, place, manner, cause. You're going to fill all of these out. Then, here are the directions. Examine the narrative above and find cases of the 6 heads of purpose that you can use to refute the narrative. Not every narrative will have all 6, so some of them will only have 3, but maybe they'll have 5 examples of one head of purpose and one of another. So you have 5 things that are unclear or clear, and only one that's implausible, say. Write your own arguments against the story using the 6 heads of purpose in chronological order. So what you're going to do is this. You look at your 6 heads of purpose. Okay, I'm doing a refutation. So I'm using unclarity, implausibility, impossibility, inconsistency, impropriety, inexpediency. So I go to the story, and I now go paragraph by paragraph from the beginning, looking for things that are unclear or improbable or what have you. And I go in order of the story. So let's look at the second paragraph. I've done these as comments on the side. When most were eager to take part in the expedition, envoys also visited Odysseus in Ithaca, but he was unwilling to go and pretended to be mad. Okay, here we have Odysseus pretending to be mad. Something that seems a little off. What's wrong with it? It's implausible that Odysseus would pretend to be mad because it is so obvious that he is not. Even a fool like Palamedes could see it. It's also inconsistent. He is brilliant and clever, so he can't be mad. There's also impropriety, right? He's a noble, right? It's also inexpedient from another perspective, okay? And so what you're going to do is you then write, okay, I have inconsistency, implausible, impropriety, inexpediency. I'll then come down here and write it under these heads of purposes. Now, you do this throughout the whole story. So you can see, let's see, I have this. We have Palamedes snatching Telemachus from Penelope's lap. That's impropriety. Why? Because how could you take a child from a woman's lap, a noble woman, right? So this is impropriety. And then we have here at the end, where later at Troy, after capturing a Phrygian, Odysseus forced him to write a treasonable letter, supposedly addressed from Priam to Palamedes. And then, after burying some gold under Palamedes' tent, he dropped the letter in the camp. Agamemnon read it, discovered the gold, and delivered Palamedes to the allies to be stoned as a traitor. Okay, so implausible. How could Odysseus bury gold under the tent unnoticed, right? Palamedes is a noble. He must have guards. How could Odysseus have snuck under and done that? It's very implausible. So once you've done these, also, it's implausible that Agamemnon would have been duped by a fake letter. Or why didn't Odysseus write the letter himself? Why did he have to hire someone to hide his handwriting, right? So these are all possible cases where you can have a refutation based on the 6 heads of purpose. But notice I didn't have all 6, right? I had implausible, I had impropriety, I had inexpediency, and so forth, but I didn't have all 6. That's fine. So what you're going to do is you're going to come down, and I put one of these here. This is actually from another student's, but we have some of the examples of implausible. It is implausible that Odysseus would pretend to be mad in front of everyone because it is so obvious that he is not. Even a fool like Palamedes was able to see it. And Odysseus is clever and should have been able to see that pretending to be mad would not have worked out so well and would have been able to make a different plan to get out of the situation, right? So the student put these down here. Was Agamemnon duped by a fake letter? And why didn't Odysseus write the letter by himself? Why did he make the Phrygian write it? It's not like Agamemnon could see the difference in handwriting. How did Odysseus bury the gold under Polymedes' tent? Polymedes is a noble, so he must have a big tent with guards all around it protecting him. So how did Odysseus slip by unnoticed? So you have two options. You can either do these little comments on the side, like I did here. So I went through and I commented that, okay, this is where the impropriety is. But what I want you to do is give the reason. Implausible that Odysseus would pretend to be mad because it is so obvious that he is not. So just a short little thing. Okay, think of it like an outline. You can do that. Or as you come upon them, you write them here, right? In unclarity or implausible or impossible, etc. You write all of it here in these little sections. But then what you're going to do is you're going to write your refutation. Now, what is the refutation? You're going to have an introduction. So this should have a basic introduction, statement of circumstance, and thesis statement. Then you're going to have your body paragraphs, and your body paragraphs are going to be structured as so. You go through the narrative chronologically. Once you hit your first case of a head of purpose, something that you're refuting, that's going to be the first thing you talk about in your body paragraph. Then you go on your second case, that's going to be the second thing you talk about, and so on and so forth. Now, the first thing that you come upon may have multiple heads of purposes, right? We had the one above with Odysseus pretending to be mad. Well, that was implausible, inconsistent, impropriety, and inexpedient. So your first paragraph may just be about Odysseus pretending to be mad, and you'll say that it's implausible, impropriety, and expediency all in the same paragraph. Then you go to the next event in the story. Now, why are we doing it this way? Why are we going with the events of the story? Because if you think about it, when you hear a story, the timeline of the storyline itself, goes into your memory. So if someone is going to refute or even confirm a story, it's natural that they would go in the order of the events in the storyline. Otherwise, it might be confusing for the listeners or readers. So that's how you're going to structure it. You can add rhetorical figures of speech, rhetorical questions, right? Any of these things. And I'll show you an example of what a student did in just a moment. So this is an example of a refutation from another student. And what she did was she had a very simple introduction, 2 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. So it doesn't have to be much more than that. Before the Trojan War, when Helen was taken from Menelaus, Agamemnon wanted to gather his armies to go and get her back from Troy. Odysseus attempted to stay out of the way, but thanks to Polymedes, his attempt was ruined. There are many reasons why this story is problematic, and in this refutation, we prove to you that this story is false. So there you go. Simple introduction has a thesis statement, has a narrative introduction that also serves as a statement of circumstance, right? She's telling you the background of the story. The thing that first stands out as ridiculous was how Odysseus fakes being dumb. It is implausible that he would pretend to be mad in front of everyone because it is so obvious that he is not, and even a fool like Polymedes was able to see it. We also know that Odysseus is clever, and should have been able to see that pretending to be mad would not have worked out so well, and he would have been able to make a different plan to get out of the situation. This act was also inconsistent and dishonorable for him, as everyone knew him to be a brilliant and clever person, not to mention a respected king. So there, she used the same event, but gave multiple heads of purpose. She's going in chronological order. That's exactly what you want to do here. So she goes on, and then Polymedes was a noble. It seems improper to snatch a child. Telemachus from Penelope's lap. What kind of person takes a mother's child from her by force? So good use of a rhetorical question, right? You want to employ these in your refutation. Rhetorical questions are very important for refutation. It was improper and indecent of him, a noble, to do so. There are 2, right, heads of purpose there. While it was improper, it did get Odysseus aggravated, and he then stopped pretending to be mad, okay? So it goes on. The last thing to point out was how Agamemnon was a great king, was duped by a fake letter. Why did Odysseus not write the letter himself? Right, rhetorical question. Was he afraid that his handwriting would be recognized? It was necessary that he made the Phrygian write it. It is not like Agamemnon could see the difference in handwriting, however smart he was. But even so, once writing the letter, how did Odysseus bury the gold under Polymedes' tent? Polymedes is a noble, so he must have had a big tent with guards all around it protecting him. Yet Odysseus somehow slipped past the guards unnoticed. Okay, so on and so forth, right? And then, she needs to add a conclusion, basically, which would say, it is very clear, something like, it is very clear from these facts, or from the fact that the story is unclear or there's a lot of impropriety on Odysseus's part, it's improbable, etc., that this story is false. So that's how she would need to conclude. This isn't her final draft, but I just want to show you what a basic refutation would look like. So that's all you have to do, right? You're going to have your intro, you're going to have your body paragraphs, and they're going to go chronological with the story, adding all this heads of purpose, and then you'll write a conclusion here. That can be very simple, just a few sentences, and that's it. You do the same exact thing for a confirmation, except instead of refuting the story, you're trying to say that the story did indeed take place.